There is a country where time feels frozen. A place where the internet barely exists. Foreign media is banned. Borders are sealed. And the outside world is described as dangerous and hostile. A nation where portraits of leaders hang in every home. Where loyalty is not just political, but personal. That country is North Korea. To understand North Korea today, we must go back to the aftermath of World War II. When Japan's occupation of the Korean peninsula ended in 1945, the region was divided along the 38th parallel. The North fell under Soviet influence, the South under American support. What began as a temporary administrative division hardened into permanent separation. In 1948, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was officially declared in the North, led by a former guerrilla fighter named Kim Il. Backed by the Soviet Union, Kim built a highly centralized state structured around socialist ideology and intense national self-reliance, known as Jaki. Just 2 years later, war erupted. The Korean War began in 1950 and drew in global powers. The United States and its allies supported the South, while China intervened on behalf of the North. After 3 years of brutal fighting, millions were dead. Cities were flattened. Yet the war ended not with peace, but with an armistice. Technically, the Korean War has never officially ended. That unresolved conflict still shapes North Korea's worldview. In the decades that followed, Kim Il-sung consolidated power and built a system unlike any other. While many socialist states eventually reformed or collapsed, North Korea moved in the opposite direction, tightening control, isolating itself further, and constructing a personality cult around its leadership. When Kim Il-sung died in 1994, power passed to his son, Kim Jong-un. It was one of the first communist dynasties in modern history. Leadership transferred not through elections, but bloodline. The 1990s were catastrophic for North Korea. The collapse of the Soviet Union cut off vital economic support. Floods devastated agriculture. The famine known as the Arduous March followed. Estimates suggest hundreds of thousands, possibly more, perished. Yet the regime survived. Despite economic hardship, North Korea doubled down on military strength. Under Kim Jong-il, the policy of Songun, or military first politics, prioritized the armed forces above all else. Resources were directed toward defense and weapons programs, even as ordinary citizens struggled. Then came the nuclear question. North Korea began pursuing nuclear technology decades ago, but tensions escalated in the early 2000s. International inspectors were expelled. Nuclear facilities were reactivated. In 2006, North Korea conducted its first nuclear test, announcing itself as a nuclear power. Sanctions followed. The United Nations imposed restrictions. The United States increased economic pressure. Yet over the next decade, North Korea conducted multiple nuclear tests and missile launches, steadily improving its capabilities. When Kim Jong-un assumed power in 2011 after his father's death, many observers questioned whether the young leader could maintain control. He was in his late 20s, largely unknown to the public. But Kim Jong-un quickly consolidated authority. Senior officials were removed. Some were reportedly executed. Military leadership was reshuffled, and the nuclear program accelerated. Missile tests grew more sophisticated. Intercontinental ballistic missile launches demonstrated potential long-range capability. Satellite imagery revealed expanding infrastructure. The world watched as tensions rose, particularly during periods of heated rhetoric between Pyongyang and Washington. Yet North Korea is more than just missiles and parades. Inside the country, daily life operates under strict surveillance and control. Citizens are categorized through a system known as Songbun, which classifies families based on perceived loyalty to the state. Access to education, employment, and housing can depend on this classification. Foreign media is banned. Radios are often fixed to government frequencies. The internet, as the world knows it, is not accessible to most citizens. Instead, a closed internal network provides limited state-approved content. Travel within the country requires permission. Leaving the country without authorization can result in severe punishment. Borders are heavily guarded, particularly the frontier with South Korea, which remains one of the most militarized zones on Earth. At the same time, Pyongyang, the capital, presents a different image. Carefully curated districts display modern apartment blocks, wide boulevards and monumental architecture. Military parades showcase disciplined troops and advanced weaponry. State media highlights development projects and scientific achievements. But much of what outsiders know about North Korea comes from satellite imagery and limited diplomatic access. Direct reporting is rare. Independent verification is difficult. The economy remains tightly controlled, though limited informal markets have emerged over time. After the famine of the 1990s, black markets known as Jangmadang began to spread, allowing citizens to trade goods unofficially. Over time, these markets became an essential survival mechanism for many families. Despite sanctions, North Korea maintains trade relationships primarily with China. Border commerce, though restricted, provides critical supplies. At the same time, sanctions target luxury goods, weapons technology, and financial transactions. One of the most mysterious aspects of North Korea is its information environment. State television portrays the leadership as protective and heroic. The outside world is often depicted as hostile and unstable. Military exercises by the United States and South Korea are framed as existential threats. This narrative reinforces the regime's central message. Survival depends on strength, and in that equation, nuclear weapons are seen not as aggression, but as insurance. North Korea frequently cites examples like Iraq and Libya, governments that abandoned weapons programs and were later overthrown. In the regime's view, nuclear deterrence ensures sovereignty. Diplomatic efforts have come and gone. Talks between North Korea and South Korea have fluctuated between hostility and cautious engagement. Summits between North Korean and American leaders marked historic moments, reducing tensions, yet long-term agreements have remained elusive. Behind the political theater lies a deeper strategic reality. North Korea is geographically small but strategically significant. It sits between China, South Korea, and Russia, near major shipping routes and military bases. Any instability on the peninsula carries regional and global implications. South Korea, officially the Republic of Korea, has developed into a technological and economic powerhouse. The contrast between the two Koreas is stark, one deeply integrated into global markets, the other largely isolated. The demilitarized zone separating them is one of the most fortified borders in the world. Yet it is also a reminder that the war never formally ended. For ordinary North Koreans, life is shaped by structure and predictability. State organizations guide education, employment, and social life. Military service is common. Public ceremonies reinforce collective identity. Information is filtered. Travel is restricted. But survival mechanisms have evolved over decades. Informal markets provide goods. Some limited economic adjustments have been introduced under Kim Jong-un, allowing small-scale entrepreneurial activity within boundaries. Externally, the country's image oscillates between unpredictability and calculated strategy. Missile tests often coincide with political developments. Diplomatic gestures are followed by periods of silence. Analysts debate whether actions are reactive or part of long-term planning. What remains consistent is the regime's emphasis on sovereignty and control. North Korea's leadership has observed the fate of other authoritarian states. It has seen revolutions, foreign interventions, and regime changes. Its policies reflect a determination to avoid similar outcomes. At the same time, isolation carries costs. Economic growth remains constrained. Infrastructure lags behind regional neighbors. Sanctions limit access to global finance and technology. Yet despite predictions of collapse that have circulated for decades, the system endures. Part of that endurance lies in centralized authority. Decisions flow from the top. Dissent is tightly controlled. Political opposition, as understood in democratic societies, does not operate openly. Another factor is narrative consistency. From education to media, the message of resistance and resilience is reinforced. And then there is deterrence. North Korea's nuclear capability changes the strategic equation. It complicates military options for adversaries. It forces negotiation rather than simple pressure. It elevates a relatively small economy into a global security conversation. The world often views North Korea through extremes, either as a dangerous threat or as a mysterious anomaly. But understanding it requires nuance. It is a country shaped by war, division, and ideological commitment. It is a state that survived famine, sanctions, and diplomatic isolation. It is a regime that prioritizes security above integration. The future remains uncertain. Will North Korea eventually reform economically? Will diplomatic agreements reduce nuclear tensions? Will generational change shift internal policies? Or will the current structure continue, balancing controlled adaptation with rigid authority? For now, North Korea remains one of the most controlled societies on Earth, yet also one of the most resilient in maintaining its chosen path. Inside its borders, daily life continues under a system built on loyalty, security, and centralized power. Outside its borders, analysts debate, governments negotiate, and the world watches. Because in a region filled with advanced economies and military alliances, North Korea stands apart, isolated, armed, and determined to define its own survival. And until lasting peace replaces the armistice signed more than 70 years ago, the Korean Peninsula will remain one of the most sensitive fault lines in global politics. The story of North Korea is not only about secrecy. It is about survival. It is about control. And it is about a nation that chose isolation over vulnerability and strength over surrender. What happens next will not only shape the peninsula, it may shape the balance of power in Asia for decades to come.